Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got a couple of the most popular of the micro compact 9mm high capacity. This is the Springfield Hellcat Pro, and that is the Sauer P365XL. Please don't forget to check out our website. Go to our affiliates page. You'll find discount codes for things like Mantis Axe and Core belts. Link to that cool little bore light that we use for lighting up the barrels. Use those links. It will often save you money, never will cost you any additional money, and helps the channel. Thank you. So SIG Sauer really disrupted the concealed carry market when they came out with the original P365. This came a little bit later, the XL version of it, and it was one of the first of the super thin, kind of a single stack size guns that held more than 7 or 8 rounds. It came with 12 rounds. Let me correct that. This comes with 12 rounds, which is the XL. The original P365 came with 10 rounds. And for a while, they were kind of the leader of the pack. A couple other manufacturers came out with one, and then Springfield Armory said, okay, if you guys are done playing around, let's do this for real. And they came out with the original Hellcat. Now this is the Pro, but they came out with the original Hellcat, and the original Hellcat had 12 rounds in roughly the same footprint. So fast forward a little bit, SIG Sauer comes out with the P365XL that holds 10 rounds in its flush magazine. I meant to say 12. I keep getting the various P365s mixed up. There's so many of them. So the XL holds 12 rounds, and it's got a slightly longer grip, slightly longer barrel, and they started milling them for optics. This one happens to have a Romeo 0 on it. So that also caught up with what a lot of the other companies were doing, which is producing natively optics-ready guns that you don't have to modify in any way. They're ready to go from the factory. Then, of course, Springfield Armory said, oh, that's cute. 12 rounds. Why do we do 15 in a flush mount magazine in the same basic footprint? And that's when the Hellcat Pro came into play. They're all optics ready. This one happens to have a hex wasp on it, but like the P365XL, they come ready to put the optic of your choice on them. And as you look at them here, you're going to see they're, from a size perspective, they're very close. They're both 6.6 inches front to back. They're both 4.8 inches tall, not counting the optic. And there is a little difference. The Hellcat is 1.0 inches, which is this one here, and the SIG Sauer is 1.1 inches. Now that's not a significant difference, but it is, a little bit different. And from a weight perspective, they're relatively close. The Hellcat Pro is 21 ounces. The P365XL is actually lighter at 20.7, so it's 0.3 ounces lighter. So effectively, when you look at the physical specs, the dimensional specs, they're as identical as they can get, such that it really isn't going to make a difference between your carry choices. But with that flush magazine, you are getting 3 additional rounds in the Hellcat. Now there is a 15-round magazine available from SIG Sauer for the P365XL, but notice it noticeably extends the grip. And it also doesn't integrate super smooth. It kind of integrates and it kind of follows the contour, but it kind of hangs at the back. It looks a little bit awkward, but it does work, and it does work well. And as far as working well, both of these guns have been dead reliable from round 1 to the last round that we fired when we had them at the range. Both of them come with good sights. The P365XL, if you don't have an optic on it, comes with the X-ray sights, SIG Sauer's X-ray sights. And basically what they are is a tritium vial with a ring around them. But what you're going to notice is you don't see any X-ray sights on the back. And that's because to put the optic on the P365XL, you do lose the rear sight. Some optics like this Romeo have a bit of a sight integrated with them in the event the optic fails. With the P365, the front is a tritium with a ring, similar to the X-ray, but not that particular specific brand, and a non-illuminated U at the back. So in their factory configuration with the X-ray, you've got basically night sights in both positions, so you've got 3 night sight dots. That's a little bit of a step up with the P365 having full night sights. But the instant you put an optic on it, lose that rear sight, now you're kind of evening the field. The optics on this, both of them have a different assortment of optics they'll use, but pretty much they're all the super micro, lightweight, low profile optics that work on both of these. From a cost perspective, they're actually really close to each other. The MSRP on the Hellcat is $634. SIG Sauer doesn't actually list MSRPs, but they're in the 600-ish territory in general. So from a pricing perspective, you're going to find them very close to each other depending on where you find them, what sales are running, and various availability. So far, other than capacity, really there's not a big difference between them, but capacity is a big one because that's what these things are all about. That's why these exist, is to say I've got a really small gun, lightweight gun, that has more capacity than you historically could get in that footprint. And the Hellcat Pro, with that 15 rounds in its flush mag, really just kind of pushes that forward and makes it difficult, really, for the P365 to keep up when it comes to that. From a styling perspective, they're different, but they both have all the same ergonomic features you'd expect. Serrations at the front, serrations at the rear, so they've got nice serrations. They're different, but they both work well. Both of them have a rail. Now, the disadvantage is the Hellcat has a regular Picatinny style rail, so any rail accessories that are out there in the market will work. The SIG Sauer has that SIG rail, so there's less compatibility. It's more you have to buy their particular things that are accessories that are designed for this rail, which there's fewer of on the market. Now, SIG is big, they're popular, their rail is well supported, but the actual standard Picatinny rail is fairly universally supported. So I would give the Hellcat the edge on both the capacity and having an industry-supported rail. Sights are replaceable on both of them. And of course I mentioned the optics. They both have peepholes for determining if you have a loaded chamber. From another safety perspective, though, they start to digress. Both of them have the drop safety piston that you've come to expect in any of the Striker guns, but the SIG has a flatty trigger with no inertial safety. So there's no split trigger, dongle, hinge, or any other type of inertial safety, very similar to the P320. And the Hellcat has the classic split trigger or dongle in the middle that you're used to prevent inertial pulls. I've never heard of a P365 failing and firing unexpectedly when dropped. Of course, you heard a lot of that with the P320, but this mechanism has been used on many guns throughout the years and is a disproven mechanism. Glocks, XDMs, Walthers, there's a wide variety of manufacturers that use these, and it is very effective in preventing an inertial pull when the gun is dropped. So it's my preference to have this or a feature similar to it, something that is meant to stop that inertial pull if it's dropped. Talking about the triggers, so we'll start with the the Hellcat Pro. Once you do it, there's a little bit of take-up. So there's the take-up to get onto the wall. A real short, crisp wall. There's the reset. It's a really nice reset. It's not super, super short, but it's a really nice reset. You're right on the wall. There's no take-up. And then again, a nice, short, crisp wall. So the Hellcat Pro has a very nice trigger. Talking about the SIG, there's a little less take-up on the SIG. Then you're on the wall. There's a little more creep through the wall, and it's a softer wall and a very definitive end. There's the reset, a very positive reset, a very forceful reset. The trigger actually pushes forward at the reset point. And no, you don't get trigger slap when you're firing this, but that kind of pushes forward and gives you a very audible click. Again, a little bit of creep through the wall and then the break. Overall, I would say both of these have a nice trigger. I wouldn't say one has a better trigger than the other. It's really going to come down to what you like. You'll like the feel of one or the other. I did find that the Hellcat Pro was a little easier to shoot well, but I could actually shoot the P365XL quite well, just as easily. But I didn't have to work for it quite as much with the Hellcat Pro. It seemed to be more natively able to do it for me. And that just may be the way it fits in my hand, the way the sights work, the way the particular red dot worked. But I did find it a little easier to pull some pretty nice groups with the Hellcat Pro. So one thing that you might come to mind is, I kind of spouted off the numbers, but it looks like the Hellcat's bigger. So I'm going to get a box, put them on a box, and resume, because I'm going to show you why the P365 looks smaller, but it really isn't. So I've set these things up on a box to get rid of the height caused by the red dot in the front sight. And you'll see that I kind of offset them a little bit to line them up, make it a little easier to see, that the front of the grip on the P365 is roughly the same height as the Hellcat Pro, but the back of their grip is lower. So it's got kind of an angled grip. Makes it look like a lot shorter. Now in reality, this may make the P365XL just a little bit easier to hide, because that back part will kind of conform to your shirt or whatever you're using to conceal it. And if I line them up beaver tail to beaver tail, you'll see that the fronts are pretty much exactly the same length, which of course matches with what the manufacturer's posted specs are. But the cutout here on the P365 kind of makes it look smaller. So there's a few characteristics of the P365 that optically make it look a little smaller, but in reality these guns are so close together in size that it's really not going to matter. So what's going to make the decision for you between them? It's going to be the capacity, it's going to be the trigger, and if you have a particular brand affinity. I really do like the Hellcat Pro. Of the two of these, all factors considered, price being roughly the same, size being roughly the same, I do personally like the trigger a little bit better on the Hellcat Pro. It just suits me a little better. I like that kind of that crisp wall. And that extra 3 rounds of capacity in the same footprint would tip me towards the the Hellcat Pro. But the P365XL is a good gun, and if you like SIGs, you got a P365 already, or that's just, you know, the area that you like to be in, you can't go wrong with it. But kind of I think the Hellcat Pro has won this round. We'll see what the next round brings in these manufacturers and others kind of up in the ante on each other. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, Getter, kind of everywhere. And thank you.